Hey guys, we're back again here in the land of junk iron mainly. Not sure if that qualifies as much of a shed, but we're working on bigger projects. But anyway, if you'll remember back a few videos ago, I kind of teased at this project. A few of you noticed. I know Daryl did. Now I got this rig right before I started YouTube, and I have been super excited to work on it. It's just never been the right time, or funds haven't been right. But our big mower's down for a few repairs. It'll probably be fixed before this video comes out, but we need this mower here going for a spare, and I need to use it for some wet spots, and it's kind of in the way of the shed build here, so we got to get it moving. And it's bad when stuff sits, so we got to get this thing rolling. We got a pretty good list to go on it. I have done some work to it before YouTube, so we'll go over that later. She's a little rough nowadays, but certainly nothing we can't restore. You heard that right. I think we're gonna restore this one. That sad seat. Now you may be wondering, what makes this lawnmower so special? This is a cross between a lawnmower and a small tractor. They call them lawn tractors or garden tractors. You know, they ain't quite a tractor, and they bigger than a lawnmower. So this particular model's a 430, and it was made up till about 1992, I think. But it's got some really cool features. It happens to be a 60-inch deck. The coolest part is we got us a 3-cylinder Yanmar. Got a full radiator and everything. Y'all know I like my diesels. It's gonna be kind of hard to see on camera, but we got a drive shaft that comes off the front of the engine, and it goes to a hydrostat rear end. In an old school fashion, it was hand direction here on the column. But this is a really cool rig. You could get all kind of attachments for them. They had front end loaders, they had 3-point hitches, snow blowers, snow blades, all kind of crap. I'd like to make a lot of attachments for it. It'll be real handy for us on the farm and the yard and everything. And it'll pull a decent amount, so it'll be really handy for us. We got a long ways to go on a restoration on it, but we do need to use it right now. I'd like to find the side panels and a new hood to go on it, and a grill. And after that, a seat and a set of tires, and this thing will be rocking pretty good. Now, it's been sitting for 3 or 4 months now, because we got a few issues with it. Every time we use it, we have to air the tires up. I'd like to buy new ones, but it's not in the cards this second. But we will get there soon. I want to find some V61s and tractor egg grips for the back. I think that'd look pretty cool and be useful. Next thing is the fuel shutoff solenoid. I have to wire it open every time I want to use it. It don't work anymore, so the key switch don't kill it either. And we have to jump start it every time because we got to put a battery in it. Just got this old Never Start. A little bit bigger than a lawnmower battery. It's got a 1-year warranty, so it's more than the lawnmower batteries come with. They're still not that great. no matter which brand you buy, so I always just try to get the cheapest one. Nowadays, if you get 2 years out of a battery, you're doing good. And I always just pick up these brass clamps. They're not the most heavy duty, but on something like this, that'll probably last the longest anyway. And that's pretty. We just need some new wiring on here when we restore it. Look really good. I hate having to jump start stuff. Now, since I've gotten this thing to run it, I've had to pull this fuel shutoff arm back and then wire it up like that. And then when you went to kill it, you had to undo that and turn the key off to kill it. That's not too bad, but certainly not right. Makes it a whole lot easier when you fix it. Now, I went on John Deere and looked this part up. They wanted like $300 and something for this. No sir, thank you. I'm good. What old Amazon came in at about 80 bucks. Don't think I wouldn't put a cable on that though. That'd certainly work. It's not as nice, but you know why this cost 80 bucks even, I don't know. Now, like I said, I had gotten this mower right before I started YouTube, but I was needing a lawnmower for Dad, and my grandpa-in-law texted me one day, and he said one of his co-workers had an old lawnmower, just old John Deere. He was wanting to get out of the yard, and immediately I thought of a mid-2000 mower with the plastic hood all busted up. That's what came to mind. You know, they ain't no better than the rest of the brands. They're the same thing. That's what came to mind. I wasn't really looking for a little ride mower, but I'd take anything I could get. So I said, all right, I'll go look at it. Well, they sent me a picture. I had never dealt with a 430 before. I hadn't seen one in this area because they ain't very common. I think they're common up north where they have to deal with snow. This thing costs like $9,000 or something crazy in 1990, so not many people around here would have one. They'd just go buy a much larger tractor for that price. Check it out. So old Danny hooked us up good with this. I met a pretty cool guy. May have to adjust on it some. Now, of course, since it's not the John Deere one, it's going to have different way of attaching the wires. Alright, that seems to be working pretty good. But with the key on, the electric fuel pump's running. It's really nice that it's got one of those. Get out of the light. But you see, we got us a little bit of a fuel leak. Check out that fuel line. We're going to replace that, but I think we need to get it under a shade tree first. Let's see, it's been a good few months since I started this. And apparently we got fuel leaks, so let's see how fast it'll fire up. don't know if this will help us out or not, but if it'll keep it from leaking down within a couple hours, I'll be happy. I think it called for like 8 to 10 ounces for a tire this size. A set of golf cart tires, 20 ounces. $25 ought to do the trick. Let's ride it around and get the slime moving in the tires. Spotted them the first pass. My favorite time of year. Good and bitter. There'll be millions of these on the property here soon. Spring has to be my favorite time of year. This and fresh wild cut onions is hard to beat, I ain't gonna lie. Mowing grass has always been my favorite pastime. Whole fence row and probably 20 acres worth. Well, we had to take a quick lunch break. And I come back, start it back up, and move it around. And you could hit the key and it wouldn't do nothing. So after playing with it a little bit, It acted like it was a dead battery, but the battery's still good and hot. After diagnosing it for a while, the starter seemed like it's acting up. Now this starter's brand new, literally. I mean, you can see the contacts still clean, but I bought this about a year ago when I got the mower. Put a brand new starter on it. This was $100 off Amazon, I believe. But apparently we was getting water in it. I don't know if you can see it, but all the brushes was stuck. I done freed this one up. The brush holders have got rust flakes in them, and it's keeping them stuck where they are. I was so aggravated because I knew this was a new starter and that I had bought, and it's been used like less than 20 times, so. But there you go. That's what sitting does to stuff. You see the holders just rusted up? So all I'm doing is just cleaning that back up, the sides of it. Now it's not great to sand those down, but obviously we're going to have a rust problem on these holders. And that's my fault for letting it sit. If you had used this starter like it was meant to be, you wouldn't have this problem. There you go, that's all it takes. It's aggravating having little troubles like that. Does anybody else have that trouble? Now when I go back in with this, I'm probably gonna put me a little bit of grease around the outside on this O-ring. I was hoping to be mowing grass by now, but kind of funny how that works. Everything takes twice as long. Anyway, we got it where it'll start good now. Hopefully we don't have to air the tires up every time. Time will tell, and the slime will get around the bead good here at some point. So let's move on to our next one on the list. We need to replace this fuel line all the way back to at least the fuel pump. I might go to the tank. To do that, we got to pull the seat off and this whole floor pan. Not too bad of a job, actually. Now all we got is two nuts right here. Man, I can't wait to put us a nice new seat on it. Have all that painted back. Anyway, here's the drive shaft and the input on the transmission. That's kind of hard to see, but right down there under this hose, there's your electric fuel pump right there. So we're going to replace from there to the injection pump, or the fuel filter, I mean. Now we're going to replace from the intake all the way back to the tank. And it's a little bit wet with diesel right here, so I'm kind of thinking our gasket's bad on the sending unit, so we might go ahead and try to glue that on while we're at it. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up having to take the battery out of it. fuel pump was held in with these 2 bolts right here. I accidentally unplugged it, so I don't know where the plug is. Look at that fuel line. All cracked and leaking. And even loose on the fuel pump too. Check that out. It's got some kind of vent hose or something. This one's old enough you can take it apart. It was still working, so we're going to leave it in there and see how long we can let it work. But I got just old cheap replacement sitting on the shelf. I keep a couple of these around. They're pretty handy for about everything. Pick you up a pair of these hose cutters. Super nice when you're replacing hose on something. Now, at work I use a set of Milwaukee PEX cutters. Those work even better, but they're also more pricey. So let's go ahead and reseal this tank wheel, since apparently that's going to leak. The whole nut came loose in the tank, so it is what it is. Now for a fuel gauge, all it's got is a light that comes on, so it ain't got like a sweep. I was actually worried that this tank was leaking, but I think it's just this. We had too much trouble and we had to sit down with an aluminum welder and build us one. We got some aluminum welding to do around here, so that's something we'll get to soon. We will do a little bit of welding on the channel, just enough to make people hate. Wouldn't be my project without too much RTV. Apparently there's a special spot for it. And of course you gotta forget the ground wire. And I think this vent line's been replaced. I thought it was gonna be the same size anyway, so I don't have the right fuel line. I can't wait to take all this apart and put it back fresh and clean. Love restoring stuff. There's a whole lot of crap off down in there. Alright, I went ahead and ran it in wire loom, by the way. Maybe it'll help it last a little bit longer. There we go. Alright, let's double check that our fuel pump still works. Alright, I can hear it clicking away under there. These have like a drain. Bleed the air off right here. Just sprayed the tripod with diesel. That's nice. We got the air bled out of it. Call that a win. Alright, it's the next day. We got the fuel lines fixed up. Slowly getting the list checked off. And the tires actually stayed up overnight, so that's good. And like I said, I had fixed some stuff before I started YouTube, so when I first got it, it was almost undrivable. You'd be driving around and you'd literally have to hold this shifter in place with a little bit of pressure on it because all the linkage going to the transmission was loose. So you'd be riding around and it'd be jerking really bad. You couldn't stand to drive it around. It would just beat you up. You'd be hitting the steering wheel. So I went through and replaced some hardware on the linkage, and it's under the fuel tank, but I replaced some hardware and welded up the holes and re-drilled them on some of the linkage. So now we have no slack in the shifter, we'll call it. Now that fixed 90% of that issue, but there's still the last little bit I was having trouble with, and I couldn't figure out where it was causing me issues. And I can't believe I didn't see it before. But I went to unload it one time at my dad's and I seen this bracket was loose under here. And it goes from each side and mounts to the front of the transmission. I don't know if you can see that, but the whole transmission's loose on the frame. It's moving a good 1/4 inch right there. So every time you go around a good turn or you start going up or downhill, any amount of change in direction, it shifts the rear axle, which is a problem itself, but it moves the linkage on the side of the transmission too that much. So it still jerks just a little bit, but not too bad. So let's get all this hardware tightened up. Now's a good time to do it with the seat pan off. But we have 2 bolts on each side. And then there's 2 bolts for this cross member and 1 in the front of the transmission. So, and the shading's got me screwed up, but there's a tab's been over the bolt. Now we're just going to put new bolts in it for right now because the bolts are actually worn where they go through the frame. Now if the bolts are worn, I can guarantee the frame's worn, but to really do it right, we'd have to take the whole transmission out and weld the holes up in the frame. But I think we're going to save that for when we tear it apart to paint it. We'll weld all that up. We're not going to put heavy use on it, so I'm not too worried about it. But to do it right, we'd have to take it apart and weld the holes up. When I did some research on this It seems like this plagues a lot of the 430s. I don't know if it does all the smaller gas engine ones, like the 300 series. I don't know if they have the same issue with those or not, but there you go. You see how much that bolt is worn through? Just from it being loose and having that much slack causes a lot of issues. And these are just 1/2 inch bolts. I got some grade 8s. Looks like those are grade 8 too. It seems like every time I see bolts on machines where they have these tabs you bend over, they always still seem to get loose. I don't know why. I end up having to red Loctite them. But this hole goes all the way through the transmission, so I don't see why we couldn't get a lot longer bolt maybe. I guess because you can't get a long enough bolt with a shoulder. But it'd be nice if we could find a long one without a shoulder to go all the way through and put a nut on the other side. That'd help keep it tight. This brake linkage is in the way, so we're losing a lot of torque from the impact from the extensions and stuff. Bend these tabs back up now. Not that they do a whole lot. Like I said, I'd prefer to have Loctite on them, but that's certainly going to be better than where we was at. Nothing but a piece of angle going across with some protectors for the hose there. And I think it's only got this one bolt that goes into the transmission itself, and then you got one on each side in the cross member. I think we're going to replace just this one going into the transmission. It's got a sheet metal tab to keep it from backing off. That didn't work, of course. This bolt's worn more than the rest of them. Got us a fresh 1/2 inch bolt. I want to tighten up this bolt before I worry about the ones on the frame. Get it tight against the transmission first. And just come from underneath like this. Alright, we got our transmission tight against the frame again. Got the cross member bolted up. And our direction lever. Pretty good and snug too. I still have to do a little work to it. The spring that holds it to one side is damaged. So when you start it, you got to hold it all the way to the center neutral position. So if you got a 430, a 420, you know, I assume the 300 series will be somewhat similar. If it's jerking around, that's the first thing I'd look at. Pull your seat pan and tank out. If you got slack in any of that linkage, it'll do that. And apparently the transmission gets loose on them, so some good tips. So the hydrostat linkage was one thing I fixed. and we put a starter on it. All right, now our hood and grill's in poor shape, but some of you may have already noticed it, but I had to put a water pump in it, and the front and rear main seals were leaking really bad. So I pulled the engine up and put those 2 seals in it and changed the oil when I first got it. I wish I had that on video. That was pretty cool. Something you 430 guys will notice, we got an aluminum radiator in it. Now they don't make an aluminum radiator just for a 430 tractor. So normally on a 430 you got a brass core radiator, and it's got an oil cooler set up in the bottom of it to cool the hydraulic oil in the transmission. I couldn't find any replacements. I found used ones for $500 and $600, and I was not really interested in a used one. And it's getting harder and harder to find people to recore them and everything. And I wasn't having it. I said I ain't going that route. So I went on eBay, I believe it was, and for 180 bucks I found a radiator for a John Deere 950 little tractor, I believe it was. It was pretty similar on sizes, but the factory 430 radiator has no cap on the top of it. They're a little bit different, so I cut a notch out of the frame, the top of the frame here, and we'll clean it up nicer when we go to paint it. But a feller could have notched this radiator out too. But then all I did was connect it onto the cooler lines and came up and put a automatic transmission oil cooler on the front, and that works pretty good. All I did was drilled holes for the hose to run up through right there. It ain't too bad. The only bad thing is the brackets on this radiator are wider. So the grill guard, there's a screen that goes in here to keep the grass and stuff from matting the radiator over. You just pull it out and clean it. I had to get rid of that because it wasn't wide enough. Same thing with the fan shroud. It also wasn't wide enough. Now what I want to do is come back and clean this up a little bit. But we're gonna, one of the problems with this is it's a real pain in the butt to take all this apart because this fan shroud is one piece. So I kind of hack jobbed and made it a 2-piece shroud where you can take it out all the time. That's so much nicer for cleaning the radiator out. We're gonna do a lot more professional job about it though. I was just trying to get it going at the time. So if your 430 needs a radiator, you can make a 950 radiator fit. You're gonna have to do some hack jobbing and fabricating to put it in there, but I like this a whole lot better anyway. Apparently it's hard to get a 430 radiator, so there's a good way to go if you need one. But other than that and what we just did to it, it ought to be pretty reliable now. Now this bumper on it's not that great looking, but we're gonna leave it on there for right this minute. I'm interested in building something a little bit nicer to go on it, but that depends on what kind of attachments we end up with. But if you don't know, these little John Deeres have remotes on the front of it where you can hook up different attachments. Usually it's for snow blades and stuff like that, but we might come up with some redneck attachments. But some of you noticed this piece of junk I got for a muffler. Normally that 90-degree piece is rotated the other way, and this muffler and all fits on the side of the motor between the frame. But as you can see, there ain't much left of this old muffler. When I replaced the front and rear main seal, it's very hard to get this muffler out of there with the engine in it. And I at the time I hadn't decided whether I was putting a new one or not on it. and I had another muffler off of something else I was gonna make work, but I'm still not wanting to pay the $400 John Deere wants for a new muffler, so we may end up building one to go back in the factory spot. I'm not 100% sure. Alright, since the seat pan's off and we got a little more room, let's see what I got to do to this deck. I'm gonna assume that's right. It looks pretty decent. I don't know if it's just me or what, but these belts on these decks are kind of hard to get on there if I'm not. I had this mower deck cutting pretty good. They throw the belt every once in a while. You could tell the spring I had wasn't large enough. There we go. That looks pretty good. This was a pretty new belt, but I throwed it a couple of times, so it's frayed on a spot or two. I think we could get some use out of it still. Alright, sweet. We got our fuel leak fixed, shut off on there, a battery. We got our loose transmission fixed, and we got our deck fixed up. That was mainly the big issues I was having with it. I hadn't been able to use it a lot yet because of those reasons. But let's go try this thing out. Now let's see what it'll do. Grass is a good 5-6 inches tall now. We made it we're starting on our 4th pass, and we threw the belt off of it. So now, like I said, I had damaged the belt before, so I'm not surprised. So I'll get one of those ordered. In the meantime, we're gonna put it back on a couple of more times and keep on trucking. But that helped out so much with making that rear end not jerk around. Way more pleasant to use. Man, that's gonna be super handy. Gonna be super nice pulling stuff with this too. Need to come up with me some kind of yard cart. Maybe one a little bit bigger and heavier than the ones you can get for a regular mower, but might move some dirt with our track hoe with it for fun. And something I failed to mention earlier is under the back here there's actually an option for a PTO setup. Now, not a 540 tractor PTO, but I'm sure we could come up with some cool uses for that. I am very tempted about coming up with some kind of flail mower for doing trails with. You'll beat one of those up pretty quick cleaning up some trails, but a flail mower would work perfect. I've been trying to keep an eye out for the pull behind ones. That would be a really nice, but we may have to build us something, maybe even something that'll fit the Mini. But this is going to be a real handy rig for us. We will get to a point we're going to restore it. That might be a minute, but in the meantime I'm going to try to gather parts like the side panels and tires and a seat and everything. I would have just went ahead and bought us some tires, but I kind of want to sandblast the wheels before I put new tires on it. So we're going to keep rocking for a little while with these. I see a lot of people get wheel weights for them and suitcase weights. We may have to end up with us a pair of those. I got to get us a belt and some fertilizer, and we'll be back in a couple of more videos to do some bush hogging and some field care. I ain't gonna call it yard care. But next video we should be working on our zero turn. That's main priority next. I do have a sandblasting rig, but we got to move our compressor up here to get on that. So I'd like to take this thing fully apart and sandblast and paint it. So if you like the restoration stuff, stick around, but it will be a minute. I haven't forgotten about the Ferguson TO20 for y'all that's been around for that. Everything in life is about timing, and it just ain't the time for that yet. But anyway, super excited to have this to a usable point. There'll be a lot more to come on it. I want to welcome all of our new subscribers and thank all of y'all for watching.